So the really cool thing is you can retrain the immune system, and you can seal leaky gut so that you can have these foods back as long as you take some precautions. Yeah.
Okay, so what would be some of the alternative foods that we could eat and consume if we got rid of all these? Because it sounds to me I'm just eating broccoli and cauliflower all day.
No,
so what are some of the alternatives that are also
there are great pastas out there made out of cassava flour. I make one at Gundry MD made out of sorghum flour. Okay. Again, have no relationship. Jovial makes phenomenal pastas out of cassava flour.
Cassava flour.
Cassava. Yeah, it's like taro root.
Oh.
And I tell you, one of the restaurants, Italian restaurants in Montecito, keeps, cassava pasta for me. And I just had a big bowl of penne pasta a couple nights ago.
And it doesn't affect you don't feel like this.
No.
This,
and it's got the
gluten hangover. And
it's got this mouth feel. It's really good now. It's, al dente. So the idea that you have to, suffer these things is old school. And I think one of the big benefits of the plant paradox being so popular is that consumers wanted alternatives, and companies rise to the occasion.
Right, started making
and they're making lots of stuff. Okay. There's lots of now pasta sauces, peeled and de-seeded tomatoes. Again, there's lots of pressure cooked beans. So it's been exciting to watch these things come about.
Right. What about, so what other foods? We got the cassava flour pasta. What about,
So there's actually increasingly now a lot of fairly safe ice creams out there that can use alternative, like coconut milk as an example. There's actually some ice creams that use a sweetener called allulose, which I'm very high on.
Allulose.
Allulose is a rare actual sugar. It was first discovered in figs, but it has no caloric value. And it's primarily produced from corn, but before everybody has a fit, by GMO allulose. Most corn in the United States is genetically modified, and that's a whole nother story in itself. Most corn in the United States is sprayed with Roundup, as is all our wheat, as is all of our everything.
Yeah.
But allulose is actually a prebiotic. So a prebiotic is fiber that feeds good gut bacteria.
So get non-GMO allulose?
And it's easy to find. It's on the internet. A lot of stores are getting it. But it's starting to appear in bars. It's starting to appear in ice creams, and so
protein bars and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay. Any other? What about for like the nuts? What's a replacement for nuts?
Number one nut, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is pistachios.
I love pistachios.
Pistachios have so many crazy health benefits, and their number one health benefit, spoiler alert, is they are the highest source of melatonin of any food.
Really?
Really. And everybody says, well, wait a minute, I don't want to go to sleep after I eat pistachios. It turns out that melatonin is only one of two actual antioxidants that are used in mitochondria to protect mitochondria. The other one is glutathione. All the other antioxidants that people talk about, vitamin C, vitamin E, blah, 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 have absolutely no effect on oxidative stress in mitochondria. There's only two, melatonin and glutathione.
Okay.
So melatonin is not a sleep hormone. Melatonin has a much higher purpose, and that is to actually repair mitochondria to uncouple mitochondria. And
Gotcha.
we'll
We'll
get
go
into
into that for sure. Yeah. So pistachios is
Pistachio
the
number
nut.
one.
Can you have
Macadamia
too
nuts
many?
are great.
Can you have too many nuts of pistachio and macadamia?
You can, so if you want to gain weight, macadamia nuts are the way to do it. And I've actually had some weight gaining challenges for some of my really skinny people. And if you want to gain weight, macadamia nuts are the way to do it.
Mac, what about pistachios?
Pistachios is pretty hard.
Macadamia nuts are so good.
Oh, I know. That's part of the problem.
That's why.
That's
That's
part
why
of the
you gain
problem.
weight.
Yeah, you really do gain weight with macadamia nuts.
So you can have more
And
pistachio.
walnuts are great.
Yeah.
Hazelnuts are great. Pine nuts are great.
Okay.
Yeah. So pecans do have a lectin I wrote about in the Plant Paradox cookbook that we often see on food sensitivity tests.
Pecans.
Pecans. But, I just tell people to go easy because, I went to medical school in Georgia and it's the state, nut.
Yes.
Help the economy.
What do you think is the best diet or food eating plan to go on to help you reverse age?
Believe it or not, my new keto program.
Really?
Yeah.
To help you
absolutely.
reverse.
Reverse age.
Why do you think that? What's the difference between that and the Plant Paradox diet?
So this is the Plant Paradox taken to its kind of ultimate conclusion. The Plant Paradox had a ketogenic program, but people were shocked with the amount of carbohydrates that were available to them in my ketogenic program, and nobody could quite figure out why, but it was really effective, particularly at losing weight. And I didn't even realize why until I was writing The Energy Paradox, and then it was like, oh my gosh, why this works has been sitting here in plain sight, and I didn't see it. And no keto expert has ever seen it because we've all been kind of led down the garden path that ketones and being in ketosis is, it's a miracle fuel and
burns fat.
Yeah, burns fat and makes you an efficient fat burner. And let's look at it this way. If you become an efficient fat burner, which is what every keto says that you will be, efficiency means you get more out of something, you get more efficiency. In other words, if you want to save gas, you buy a Toyota Prius, which is very efficient at getting the most miles out of a gallon of gas. On the other hand, if you want to be fuel inefficient, then you buy a Ferrari, which is really good at wasting gas. Now, there might be other reasons to have a Ferrari rather than a Prius, but we won't go there. So fat has 9 calories per gram. Amino acids and carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. So fat has more than twice the calories by weight of carbohydrates or proteins. So if you become an efficient fat burner and you're eating fat, then you ought to gain weight.
Why don't people gain weight?
Believe it or not, a ton of people gain weight on ketogenic diets.
Why is that?
Because they're actually eating the wrong kinds of fats. And the book shows why eating the wrong kind of fats do this. Most people eating a high saturated fat diet, cream cheese and bacon, actually become insulin resistant, and they actually develop high blood sugar. And that insulin goes up, and insulin is actually the fat storage hormone. So when you're eating a lot of fat, you actually can get fatter and fatter. And I profile a patient of mine who I call Miranda in the book, who had been doing a true supervised ketogenic diet for 2 years, and she had gained 30 pounds in 2 years.
Really?
And was really pissed. And
she's like, all the experts say that you're supposed to follow this.
Yeah, and she was doing it. She showed me her food diaries, and yet when we measured her, she was insulin resistant. She had high insulin levels. She was pre-diabetic, And she was apoplectic, and she literally, she said, what are you talking about? I'm a saint on this diet. I said, yeah, this is what we see. That's why 60% of people who try a ketogenic diet give it up quickly, because they don't see the results that are promised. And it's clear after I wrote Unlocking the Keto Code why people aren't getting the results that were promised. Because
what are people doing wrong on the old way of doing the keto diet, and how should they approach it now with the new information?
So one of the big problems is that, and this is shocking information, you look at normal weight individuals in the United States, 50% of normal weight individuals are metabolically inflexible. And I've used those terms before, but let's define it again.
Okay, what is that?
Normally, you and I can burn glucose to make ATP in our mitochondria. But we can also, if glucose runs out, burn free fatty acids, fat, as a fuel. And normally, the second glucose runs out, we should be able to switch over to burning fat as a fuel. Just very much like a hybrid car. When you're running on gasoline, the battery, which we'll call fat, is being charged. When the gasoline runs out, the battery can discharge and power the vehicle. 50% of normal weight people are metabolically inflexible. They can't do that.
They can't switch on to burning fat.
They can't switch to burning fat.
Interesting.
Now you look at overweight people, 88% of overweight people are metabolically inflexible. They cannot switch over to burning fat.
So how do you switch over then?
And get this, 98.5% of obese people are metabolically inflexible. They cannot make the switch.
Is that meaning they can't make the switch on a day-to-day basis?
On a 24-hour basis.
They can't switch and burn.
They can't.
But if you
But
intermittent fast for a couple days.
I'm glad you asked that. Have you been reading up?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it turns out that when we have, and metabolically inflexible people have normally high insulin levels.
Okay.
Simplistically, insulin is a fat storage hormone.
Yes.
That's why back in the old days when we gave people insulin who were diabetics, they got fatter and fatter because we were injecting them with the hormone that stores fat. So when we eat, insulin comes up, insulin knocks on your muscle cells and says, hey, Louis just had a great meal. Here, I want to sell you this stuff. Open the door. And your muscles say, oh yeah, good, I'm hungry. Give it to me. So you're insulin sensitive. Now, unfortunately, most people, insulin levels are high almost all the time because your muscles are full. They don't want anything to eat. They go away, don't come back. But insulin keeps trying, so it keeps pushing. When insulin is high, it has a second effect. It blocks the release of fat from fat cells.
Okay.
Now think about it. If you and I just killed a bison and we were gorging on bison, we would want to store most of what we ate as fat because probably we weren't going to kill a bison for a while. So insulin, when it's high, is storing fat. But insulin, you wouldn't want to burn fat while you're doing that. So insulin says, no, it's staying here in the storage tanks. So there was a very good purpose for that. But normally, if you and I stopped eating, after about 8 hours, your blood sugar levels would pretty much be used up. Insulin would fall, and then fat would come rolling out of your fat cells, out of your hybrid battery, and you'd start burning fat as a fuel. And everything's fine. But if you go on a ketogenic diet when you're metabolically inflexible and all you're eating is fat,
what happens then?
You can't get to that fat, and you crash and burn. And that gives you the keto flu, the Atkins blues. Your athletic performance plummets.
Your energy goes down.
Your energy goes down. You get that headachy feeling.
And you say, give me some carbs.
Yeah. And
Give me some
yeah,
carbs.
yeah, and your brains go, what the heck? I got nothing here. I got nothing. And that's what's really cool. So normally, all of your cells, all of my cells, are delighted to burn free fatty acids. It's a great fuel. The problem is free fatty acids are actually big molecules, and they can't get through the blood-brain barrier. They're too big. So that's a problem. Everybody else in you can do fine, but if your brain can't burn free fatty acids because they can't get there. It could do it if they could get there. So we have this clever system that when free fatty acids are outflowing, some of them go to the liver, and the liver converts them into water-soluble, short-chain fatty acids called ketones, or ketone bodies. The liver can't use ketone bodies, so it throws them out into the bloodstream, and ketone bodies can get past the blood-brain barrier. So they can serve as a backup fuel for the brain during the time you're sleeping, during the time you're starving, or during the time you're eating a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet. But everybody got the idea, thanks to some research out of Harvard and the NIH years ago by Cahill and Veach, that because ketones could provide an alternative fuel, that it must be a super fuel, and that we should always try to be starving. In fact,
get into ketosis, right?
Yeah, get into ketosis. Get into ketosis. Well, one of the proteges of Dr. Cahill, Dr. Owens, in 2004, just fairly recently, showed that even at a full ketogenic output, a full ketogenic diet, only 30% of our power could come from ketones. 70% still had to come from free fatty acids and glucose. And even at full ketosis, your brain still has to have 30 to 40% of its energy met by glucose, not ketones. If you found this video helpful, I think you're going to love this one. 1 avocado a day is shown in human clinical trials to make you lose weight. Part of the reason is that avocados have a lot of fiber that your gut buddies love, and they'll take care of you.